My son called me a burden, while I sat on a plastic chair in his garage, holding the lottery ticket worth $33 million in my purse. He slammed his hand on the workbench and told me to stop being so needy. That's when I decided to disappear completely and let them all think I'd lost everything. If you're watching this, subscribe and let me know where you're watching from. But let me back up and tell you how I got to that moment, sitting in that cold garage like some unwanted piece of furniture. It was a Tuesday morning in October when I bought that ticket at Murphy's Corner store, same as I'd done every week for the past 15 years. Helen Murphy smiled and handed me my usual one Powerball ticket with my late husband's birthday numbers. "Feeling lucky today, Carol?" she asked. I laughed and said what I always said, "If I win, you'll be the first to know." 3 days later, I was alone in my kitchen when the numbers were announced. I checked once, then twice, then had to sit down because my hands were shaking so badly I could barely hold the ticket. Every single number matched. $33 million. After taxes, still more money than I'd ever dreamed of seeing. My first instinct was to call my son Michael, but something made me pause. Maybe it was the way he'd been treating me lately, always impatient, always acting like I was some kind of inconvenience. Or maybe it was how my daughter Jennifer had been pushing me to sell the house and move to one of those active senior communities where I'd be around people my own age, as if 67 was ancient. I folded the ticket carefully and put it in my purse. Then I made a decision that would change everything. I wasn't going to tell anyone. Not yet. First, I wanted to see how my family really felt about me when they thought I had nothing left to give. The opportunity came sooner than I expected. That same week, my property tax bill arrived, higher than usual due to the new assessment. I'd been planning to pay it with my usual budget adjustments, but now I had a better idea. I called Michael and asked if I could borrow $2,000. $2,000! His voice immediately turned cold. "Mom, what did you spend your money on this time?" "The property taxes came in higher than expected. I just need help covering the difference until next month." There was a long pause. "Mom, you can't keep living beyond your means. Maybe it's time to seriously consider downsizing." I pressed on, making my voice smaller, more desperate. "I hate to ask, but I don't know what else to do. Could you help me just this once? Let me talk to Sarah about it. We'll get back to you." He didn't get back to me. After 3 days of silence, I called Jennifer. Her response was even worse. "Mom, Michael told me about the tax situation. Honestly, we've been worried about your financial management for a while now. Maybe this is a wake-up call." "I'm not asking for charity," I said quietly. "Just a temporary loan." "But it's never temporary, is it? There's always something. The roof, the furnace, now taxes. You're hemorrhaging money on that house." That weekend, Michael finally called back. "Mom, we need to talk. Can you come over Sunday afternoon?" Standing in his driveway Sunday afternoon, looking at his perfect house with its perfect landscaping, I wondered what kind of test I'd really designed for myself. Sunday afternoon, I sat in Michael's pristine living room while he and Sarah exchanged meaningful glances. Their house was gorgeous, the kind of place featured in magazines, all marble countertops and custom cabinets. The irony wasn't lost on me that I was begging for $2,000 while sitting surrounded by what probably cost them $200,000 in renovations. "Mom," Michael began, using that patronizing tone I'd grown to hate, "we're concerned about you." Sarah nodded sympathetically. "We've been talking, and we think you're in denial about your financial situation." I gripped my purse tighter, feeling the lottery ticket inside. "What do you mean?" "The constant money problems," Michael said. "First it was the roof repair, then the heating system, now taxes. You're obviously living beyond your means." I wanted to laugh. If only they knew I was sitting on enough money to buy their house 3 times over. Instead, I made my voice smaller. "I've managed fine for 40 years in that house." "That's just it, Mom. You haven't been managing fine. You've been struggling, and it's only going to get worse as you get older." Sarah leaned forward with practiced concern. "We've been looking at some wonderful senior living communities, places where you wouldn't have to worry about maintenance or property taxes or any of that stress." "You want me to sell my home? The house where I'd raised my children, where Tom and I had been happy for 35 years before cancer took him." "We want you to be realistic," Michael said firmly. You're 67 years old. How much longer can you really handle a 4-bedroom house with that big yard? I studied my son's face, looking for any trace of the little boy who used to build blanket forts in that living room. He wanted me to give up. All I saw was impatience and something that looked disturbingly like calculation. What about the $2,000 for taxes? I asked quietly. Michael and Sarah exchanged another look. Mom, we can't keep enabling your poor financial decisions. If we bail you out now, you'll just get into the same situation again next year. So you won't help me. We're trying to help you in the long run, Sarah said sweetly. Sometimes tough love is what's needed. I sat there for a moment, absorbing the full weight of their rejection. My own son, who I'd supported through college, who I'd babysit for every weekend when his kids were small, who I'd helped with the down payment on this very house, was refusing to lend me $2,000. I understand, I said, finally standing up. I should go. Mom, don't be like this, Michael said, but he made no move to stop me as I walked to the door. Driving home, I made another decision. I was going to take this test further. I wanted to see exactly how far my family's concern for my well-being would extend when they thought I was truly desperate. The next morning, I called Jennifer and told her that Michael couldn't help with the taxes. Her response was swift and brutal. Well, maybe this is exactly the wake-up call you need, Mom. You can't expect us to keep rescuing you from your own poor choices. That afternoon, I drove to Murphy's Corner store and quietly arranged to claim the winning ticket through a trust, keeping my name out of the public records for now. The money would be available whenever I needed it, but first, I had more testing to do. The next 3 weeks were like watching a nature documentary about vultures circling wounded prey. Word spread quickly through the family that I was having financial difficulties, and suddenly everyone had an opinion about what I should do with my life. My sister-in-law, Patricia, called with a suggestion about a charming studio apartment in her building. It's perfect for someone in your situation, Carol. Very affordable, and you wouldn't have all that house maintenance to worry about. My nephew David stopped by unexpectedly, offering to help me organize my affairs. He spent an uncomfortable hour asking probing questions about my savings account and whether I'd considered getting a reverse mortgage. But it was the family dinner at Jennifer's house that really opened my eyes to how they saw me. She'd invited everyone, Michael and Sarah, her husband Greg, even my brother Robert and his wife. Ostensibly, it was to celebrate Greg's promotion, but I soon realized I was the main course. So, Mom, Jennifer said as she served dessert, have you given any more thought to what we discussed about downsizing? All conversation stopped. Everyone at the table turned to look at me with expressions ranging from pity to barely concealed annoyance. I'm still considering my options, I said carefully. What options? Sarah asked with a little laugh. You can't afford the taxes on that house. Maybe it's time to face reality, Robert chimed in. You're not getting any younger, and that house is just going to become more of a burden. There was that word again. Burden. Like I was some kind of dead weight dragging everyone down. The market is still good, Greg added helpfully. You could probably get a decent price if you list soon, before winter sets in and things slow down. I looked around the table at these people. My children, my brother, people I'd loved and supported and sacrificed for, and realized they were all relieved. Relieved that my financial crisis was giving them permission to say what they'd apparently been thinking all along, that I was too much trouble, too expensive, too inconvenient to keep around. You know, I said slowly, you're all probably right. Maybe I should sell. The relief in the room was palpable. Jennifer actually smiled. I think that's very wise, Mom, Michael said, and we'll help you find something suitable, something more appropriate. Appropriate. As if the home where I'd been happy for 40 years was somehow unseemly for a woman my age. After dinner, I overheard Sarah talking to Jennifer in the kitchen. Thank God she's finally being reasonable. I was so tired of the constant financial drama. I know, Jennifer replied. And honestly, that house is way too much for her anyway. She'll be much better off somewhere smaller. I slipped out without saying goodbye. That night, I sat in my kitchen, the kitchen where I'd made countless meals for these ungrateful people, and planned my next move. If they wanted to see me as a burden, I'd show them what a real burden looked like. But I was also starting to realize something else. This test was revealing more than just their greed. It was showing me how little they thought of my intelligence, my competence, my right to make my own decisions. I started small. First, I accidentally bounced a check at the grocery store and had to call Michael for help. He sighed heavily and asked why I couldn't just be more careful with my account balance. Then I showed up at Jennifer's house, claiming my car wouldn't start and I needed a ride to the doctor. "Mom, this is exactly what we've been talking about," she said, as she grudgingly drove me across town. "You're becoming too dependent. What happens when we're not available to drop everything and help you?" The beautiful irony was that I'd never been less dependent in my life. I had $33 million earning interest in a secure account. But here I was, pretending to need my children for basic survival. But the real test came when I called Michael claiming to have fallen in my kitchen and hurt my back. Not seriously injured, I assured him, but enough that I was scared to be alone. And could I please stay with them for a few days? The silence on the phone was deafening. "Mom, this really isn't a good time," he finally said. "Sarah's mother is visiting next week, and we just don't have the space." "I could sleep on the couch," I said, making my voice small and pathetic. "That's not appropriate for someone your age with a back injury. Look, why don't I call Dr. Peterson and see if he can prescribe something for the pain?" He wanted to medicate me rather than let me stay in his guest room. His guest room that had hosted Sarah's college friends, their neighbors from out of town, even their dog groomer when she was between apartments. "Never mind," I said quietly. "I'll manage." "Mom, don't be dramatic. You'll be fine. You're tougher than you think." Tough. Right. I was tough enough to raise 2 children as a working single mother after their father walked out. Tough enough to work double shifts as a nurse to pay for their college educations. Tough enough to care for my dying husband while still maintaining a household. But God forbid I need a place to sleep when I'm hurt. That evening, my doorbell rang. I opened it to find Mrs. Henderson from next door holding a casserole dish. "Carol, honey, I saw your car in the driveway all day and got worried. Are you feeling all right?" Without thinking, I found myself telling her about my supposed fall and back pain. Her face immediately filled with genuine concern. "Oh my goodness, you shouldn't be alone. Come stay with Harold and me until you're feeling better. We have that daybed in the sunroom that's perfectly comfortable." I stared at this woman, someone I barely knew beyond friendly waves and holiday cookies, who was offering me exactly what my own children had refused. "That's very kind, but I couldn't impose." "Nonsense. Harold will come help you pack a bag right now. Family takes care of family, and you've been like family to us since Tom passed." As Harold Henderson helped me carry an overnight bag to their house, I realized something profound. These virtual strangers showed me more care and concern in one evening than my own children had in months. But I was about to discover that the Hendersons' kindness was nothing compared to what was coming next. It was Mrs. Henderson who answered the phone when Jennifer finally called the next evening, wondering why I wasn't picking up at home. I listened from the sunroom as she explained that I was staying with them because of my injury. "Staying with you?" Jennifer's voice was loud enough that I could hear it across the room. "Why would she do that?" "Because the poor dear was hurt and alone," Mrs. Henderson said, with the kind of steel in her voice that came from raising 6 children. "Her family wasn't available to help." There was a pause. Then, "Well, we appreciate you looking after her, but she really should have called us first." "She did call, Mrs. Henderson replied coolly. "Apparently, it wasn't convenient." After she hung up, Mrs. Henderson came into the sunroom shaking her head. "That daughter of yours sounded more annoyed than concerned. Are you sure she understood that you were hurt?" "Oh, she understood," I said bitterly. "Well, you just stay here as long as you need to. Harold and I enjoy the company." And they did. For 3 days they fussed over me like I was their own daughter. Mrs. Henderson made my favorite soup without me even asking. Harold fixed the wobbly leg on my kitchen table that I'd mentioned in passing. They included me in their evening crossword puzzle ritual and listened with genuine interest when I talked about Tom or my nursing career. On the 3rd day, as I was helping Mrs. Henderson with the dishes despite her protests about my injured back, I found myself fighting tears. "What's wrong, dear?" she asked immediately. "Nothing's wrong. That's just it. I can't remember the last time anyone took care of me like this. Made me feel like I mattered." Mrs. Henderson set down her dish towel and turned to face me fully. "Carol, I don't know what's going on with your children, but I want you to know something. You matter. You matter to Harold and me, and you should matter to them." That evening, Jennifer finally showed up. She stood in the Hendersons' living room looking around with barely concealed disapproval, as if the comfortable, lived-in furniture was somehow offensive. "Mom, this has gone on long enough. You need to come home." "Actually, I've been very comfortable here," I said, from my spot on the couch where Harold and I had been watching the evening news. "It's inappropriate for you to impose on the neighbors like this." Mrs. Henderson stood up from her chair, all 5 feet of her radiating maternal fury. "Now you listen here, young lady. Your mother isn't imposing on anyone. She's been a delightful guest, and she's welcome to stay as long as she likes." Jennifer's face flushed. "With all due respect, Mrs. Henderson, this is a family matter." "You're absolutely right," Mrs. Henderson shot back. "It is a family matter. The question is, why wasn't her family here when she needed them?" The silence that followed was deafening. I watched my daughter struggle to find an answer that wouldn't make her look like exactly what she was, a selfish woman who couldn't be bothered to care for her injured mother. "We had obligations," Jennifer finally said weakly. "So did we," Harold said quietly from his chair. "But some things are more important than obligations." Jennifer left without another word, but not before giving me a look that promised we'd be having words later. The next morning, I woke up to the sound of voices in the kitchen. Mrs. Henderson was talking to someone, and I heard a man's voice responding. When I emerged from the sunroom, I found a stranger sitting at their kitchen table, a tall, silver-haired man in an expensive suit who stood up immediately when he saw me. "Mrs. Patterson," he said, "my name is David Harrison. I'm an attorney, and I believe we need to talk." David Harrison had kind eyes behind wire-rimmed glasses and the sort of presence that made you feel like everything would be okay. He also had news that was about to turn my little test upside down. "Mrs. Patterson, I represent the estate of Margaret Fleming. I believe you knew her as Maggie Fleming. She worked with you at St. Mary's Hospital?" My heart stopped. Maggie, my dear friend and mentor from my early nursing days, who had died 6 months ago. I'd been unable to attend her funeral because Jennifer had insisted I accompany her to some work function instead. "Yes, I knew Maggie. She was wonderful, but I don't understand why you're here." David smiled gently. "Maggie left you something in her will. She spoke of you often in her final years, said you were like the daughter she never had. She wanted to make sure you were taken care of." Mrs. Henderson gasped. "How wonderful! What kind of something?" I asked, though my mind was already racing. This could complicate my lottery test in ways I hadn't anticipated. David opened his briefcase and pulled out a thick envelope. $250,000. And her house in Clearwater, Florida. It's fully paid for. A beautiful little place near the beach where she retired. She said she remembered you always talking about wanting to live by the ocean someday. I stared at him, speechless. This was impossible. Just when I thought I had life figured out, when I was testing my family's true feelings, the universe was throwing me another curveball. "There's more," David continued. "Maggie left specific instructions that this inheritance was to be kept confidential until after her estate was settled. She was concerned about people treating you differently if they knew about it too soon. She said something about wanting you to see people's true colors first. Even from beyond the grave, Maggie was protecting me and giving me an opportunity I hadn't expected." "When would I need to decide about the house?" I asked. "There's no rush. You could visit first, see if it suits you, or sell it if you prefer. It's worth quite a bit in today's market. But Mrs. Patterson, there's something else. Something Maggie insisted I tell you personally." He leaned forward, his expression serious. "She said if anyone in your family tried to pressure you about this inheritance, tried to make decisions for you or treat you like you couldn't handle your own affairs, I was to remind you that you have options, that you don't owe anyone access to information about your finances, and you certainly don't owe anyone control over your life choices." Mrs. Henderson reached over and squeezed my hand. That Maggie was a smart woman. My phone buzzed with a text from Michael. "Mom, we need to talk about your living situation. Can you meet us for lunch tomorrow? Time to make some decisions." I showed the text to David, who raised an eyebrow. "Interesting timing. What do you think Maggie would say about that?" I thought about my dear friend, who had worked until she was 75, not because she had to, but because she loved what she did, who had traveled to 6 continents after retirement, who would never let anyone tell her she was too old, too frail, or too much of a burden. She'd say it's time to stop letting other people make decisions about my life, I said quietly. And what do you say? I looked around Mrs. Henderson's warm kitchen, thought about the lottery ticket that had started this whole charade, considered Maggie's final gift, and felt something shift inside me. My test was about to become something much bigger. I say it's time for my family to learn some truths, but maybe not all of them, not yet. David smiled. Now that sounds like something Maggie would approve of. Should I arrange for the paperwork to transfer the house deed? As I nodded, I was already planning exactly how tomorrow's lunch was going to go. My children thought they were meeting with a desperate, dependent old woman who needed their guidance. Instead, they were about to meet someone with options they couldn't imagine. But I was going to save my biggest surprise for when I really needed it. I arrived at the restaurant 15 minutes early and chose a table by the window where everyone could see us. When Michael and Jennifer walked in with their spouses trailing behind, they looked like a delegation coming to deliver an ultimatum. Perfect. Mom, thanks for meeting us, Michael said as they settled into their chairs. We've been discussing your situation, and we think it's time for some tough decisions. I sipped my iced tea calmly. What kind of decisions? Sarah opened a folder she'd brought. We've researched several senior communities in the area. Some really lovely places with activities and meal plans, much more suitable than rattling around in that big house alone. The Henderson situation made us realize how vulnerable you are, Jennifer added. What if something serious had happened? What if they hadn't been home? I nodded thoughtfully. You're absolutely right. I could have been in real trouble. But before we go any further, there's something I need to tell you all. Michael leaned forward expectantly, probably thinking I was about to confess to more financial problems. I inherited some money, I said simply. Sarah blinked. Inherited? From whom? My friend Maggie Fleming. She left me her house in Florida and $250,000. The silence at the table was deafening. I could practically hear their mental calculators working. $250,000? Jennifer repeated slowly. Plus the house. It's worth about $300,000 according to the market assessment. Michael's face was cycling through confusion, relief, and something that looked suspiciously like calculation. Mom, that's wonderful, but this changes everything. You need professional guidance now. Professional guidance? Financial advisors, estate planners. Sarah jumped in quickly. People who understand how to protect assets. You could be a target for scammers. Jennifer nodded vigorously. Mom, with that kind of money, you need to be very careful about the decisions you make. Maybe we should all meet with a lawyer together. I watched their faces transform. 24 hours ago, I was a burden who needed to be managed. Now suddenly I was a vulnerable senior who needed their protection. I'm thinking about moving to Florida, I said quietly. Moving? Michael's voice went sharp. Mom, that's exactly the kind of impulsive decision we're worried about. You can't just uproot your entire life because you inherited some money. It's not impulsive. I've always wanted to live near the ocean. But you don't know anyone there, Jennifer protested. What if something happened to you? What if you got sick? Greg leaned forward. Plus, there are legal implications. Florida has different estate laws. You'd need to transfer everything properly, set up new banking relationships. It's complicated. I noticed how quickly the conversation had shifted from my well-being to legal and financial logistics. Interesting. I have time to figure it out, I said. Do you, though? Sarah asked. These inheritance situations have deadlines, tax implications. You really shouldn't make any major decisions without consulting with us first. Us. As if my inheritance was a family matter requiring group approval. Michael reached across the table and patted my hand. Mom, we just want to make sure you're protected. Why don't you give us power of attorney? Just temporarily until we can get all the professional advice lined up. There it was. The first real move. Power of attorney? I kept my voice neutral. Just to help with the paperwork, Jennifer said quickly. You know how complicated these financial things can be. We could handle all the boring legal stuff so you don't have to worry about it. I looked around the table at their carefully concerned faces. Such devoted children, wanting to protect me from the burden of managing my own inheritance. That's very thoughtful, I said, standing up. Let me think about it. Mom, don't take too long, Michael called after me. These things have time-sensitive elements. As I walked to my car, I could hear them talking animatedly through the restaurant window, planning my protection, no doubt. 3 days later, Jennifer showed up at my door with a man in an expensive suit and a briefcase full of papers. "Mom, this is Richard Caldwell. He's an elder law attorney who specializes in estate protection. I thought you should meet him." I invited them in, curious to see how far this would go. "Mrs. Patterson," Richard said with practiced warmth, "your daughter is wise to seek professional guidance. Sudden wealth can be overwhelming, especially for seniors. I'm managing fine so far." "Of course you are. But there are pitfalls you might not be aware of. Scammers, investment schemes, even well-meaning friends who might take advantage." He opened his briefcase. "I've drawn up some basic protection documents. Nothing major, just safeguards." Jennifer sat beside me on the couch. "Mom, Richard explained how people target recent inheritors, especially older women living alone." "What kind of safeguards?" I asked. Richard spread papers across my coffee table. "A revocable trust to protect the assets, updated power of attorney documents, medical directives, standard protection for someone in your situation." My situation. There was that phrase again. "And who would manage this trust?" "Well, typically family members serve as trustees. Your daughter and son could handle the day-to-day management while you retain full benefits and control." I picked up one of the documents, scanning the legal language. Buried in the third paragraph was language that would essentially give Michael and Jennifer control over all major financial decisions. "This is very thorough," I said, "but there's something else I should probably mention." Jennifer and Richard both leaned forward. "The inheritance isn't my only recent windfall." I reached into my purse and pulled out the lottery ticket, setting it carefully on the coffee table next to Richard's papers. "I also won the lottery, $33 million. The silence was deafening. Richard's pen stopped moving. Jennifer's face went completely white. "$33 million?" Jennifer whispered. "After taxes, about $21 million. Give or take." Richard recovered first, his lawyer instincts kicking in. "Mrs. Patterson, this significantly changes the protection needs. With assets of this magnitude, you absolutely cannot make any decisions without proper legal and financial guidance." "Mom," Jennifer's voice was shaky, "why didn't you tell us about this before?" "I wanted to see how you'd treat me when you thought I was broke versus when you thought I had money. Interesting how quickly your concern for my competence appeared once dollars were involved." Richard shuffled his papers nervously. "Mrs. Patterson, I understand you might feel overwhelmed, but these assets require immediate protection. We're talking about generational wealth here. My generation seems to be managing just fine." Jennifer stood up abruptly. "Mom, you can't be serious about handling this alone. Do you have any idea what kind of responsibility this is?" "I have some idea. I've been managing my own finances for 67 years. This is different." Jennifer's composure was cracking. "This is life-changing money. You could lose everything if you make the wrong decisions." Richard nodded gravely. "Your daughter is absolutely right. Without proper management, assets of this size can disappear very quickly, especially if the holder lacks experience with complex financial instruments." I looked at these two people, one who'd known me for 40 years, another who'd met me 10 minutes ago, both convinced I was incompetent to manage my own money. "I think I need some time to consider all this," I said finally. "Time is exactly what you don't have," Richard said urgently. "Every day these assets remain unprotected is a day they're at risk." Jennifer grabbed my hands. "Mom, please, let us help you. We just want what's best for you." After they left, I sat in my living room staring at the business card Richard had pressed into my hand. On the back, he'd written, "Urgent, call immediately," in red ink. My phone buzzed with a text from Michael. "Jennifer told me about the lottery. We need to meet ASAP. This changes everything." No kidding, Michael. This changed everything. The next morning, I woke up to find Michael sitting in my kitchen. He'd used his old emergency key. "Mom, we need to talk. Now." I poured myself coffee, noting how he'd made himself at home. "Good morning to you too. Do you have any idea what you've done? Going around telling people about this lottery win?" "I told my family. I thought you'd be happy for me." "Happy?" Michael laughed bitterly. "Mom, by next week this will be all over town. You'll have every scammer, every long-lost relative, every sob story within 50 miles showing up at your door." Then maybe I should move to Florida sooner rather than later. That's exactly the kind of thinking that proves you need supervision. Michael pulled out his phone. I've been doing research all night. Do you know what happens to lottery winners who don't have proper guidance? 70% go bankrupt within 5 years. I'm not going bankrupt, Michael. How do you know? Have you ever managed $21 million before? Do you understand tax shelters? Investment portfolios? Estate planning? I understand that it's my money. It's family money, Mom. This affects all of us. Emma's college fund, Tommy's future, Jennifer's kids. You can't just run off to Florida and pretend this only affects you. I set down my coffee cup carefully. Are you saying my money belongs to the family? I'm saying you have responsibilities. To us, to your grandchildren. Money like this comes with obligations. What kind of obligations? Michael pulled out a folder I hadn't noticed before. I've scheduled meetings with 3 financial advisory firms this week. Top-tier places that handle high-net-worth clients. And I've made an appointment with Dr. Morrison for a cognitive assessment. A what? A cognitive assessment. To establish baseline mental capacity, it's standard procedure for anyone managing significant assets. Protects everyone involved. I stared at my son. You want me to take a mental competency test? I want to protect you from making decisions you might regret later. Mom, you're talking about moving across the country, abandoning your support system, making major life changes. These are classic signs of poor judgment in elderly inheritance recipients. Elderly inheritance recipients? It's a documented phenomenon. Sudden wealth syndrome. It can cause erratic behavior, especially in seniors. My phone rang, Jennifer's name on the screen. Put it on speaker, Michael said. I answered normally. Hello, sweetheart. Mom, thank God you're there. I've been so worried. Listen, I spoke to Richard last night, and he's very concerned about your exposure right now. My exposure? Legal exposure. Financial exposure. Mom, people are going to start coming out of the woodwork. We need to establish protective measures immediately. Michael leaned forward. Tell her about the guardianship option. My blood went cold. Guardianship? It's just a precaution, Jennifer said quickly. Richard explained that with assets this large, if there's any question about cognitive capacity, the court could appoint a stranger to manage your affairs. But if we establish voluntary guardianship now with family members, you'd maintain much more control. Voluntary guardianship means you're still in charge, Michael added. We just handle the day-to-day financial management. You'd have full access to funds for your needs. What if I don't want voluntary guardianship? Silence on the phone. Michael's jaw tightened. Mom, Jennifer's voice became very gentle. We're just trying to protect you. If you refuse reasonable protection measures, it might raise questions about your judgment. What kind of questions? The kind that lead to involuntary court proceedings, Michael said bluntly. Mom, we're offering you the easy way, the family way. But if you insist on being unreasonable... He didn't finish the sentence. He didn't need to. That afternoon, my doorbell rang. I opened it to find Emma, my 16-year-old granddaughter, standing on my porch with tears in her eyes. Grandma, is it true? Are you really moving to Florida? Behind her, I could see Jennifer sitting in her car, watching. I'm considering it, sweetheart. Why? Mom says if you move, we might not see you anymore. She says Florida is really far, and you might forget about us. I knelt down to Emma's level. Honey, I could never forget about you. Florida isn't on Mars. There are planes, video calls. But Mom says it's not the same. She's been crying all morning. She says you're abandoning the family. I looked over at Jennifer, still sitting in her car like a puppet master pulling strings. Emma, would you like to come in for some cookies? I can't. Mom says we need to get home. But Grandma? Emma hugged me tightly. Please don't leave us. We need you here. As they drove away, my phone buzzed with a text from Michael. Emma's just the first. Tommy's asking questions too. Is this really how you want to break up the family? An hour later, my brother Robert called. Carol, what's this I hear about you moving to Florida? Michael called me, says you've come into some money and you're making rash decisions. Hello to you too, Robert. He's worried about you. Says you're not thinking clearly. Maybe you should listen to your children. Did Michael tell you how much money I inherited? He mentioned it was substantial. Look, Carol, I know you're still grieving Tom, but running away isn't the answer. I'm not running away. Then what would you call it? Michael says you won't even consider their help with managing this inheritance. That doesn't sound like the sensible sister I know. After I hung up, I realized what was happening. Michael and Jennifer were building a narrative. Eccentric widow, unexpected wealth, irrational behavior, family concern. They were creating the foundation for a legal challenge to my competency. My phone rang again. David Harrison's number. Mrs. Patterson, I hope you don't mind me calling. I had an interesting conversation today with a Richard Caldwell. He was asking questions about the Fleming estate, wanted to verify the inheritance details. What kind of questions? Timeline questions. When you first learned about the inheritance, whether there were any signs of cognitive decline that might have influenced Mrs. Fleming's decision to leave you assets. My stomach dropped. What did you tell him? I told him attorney-client privilege prevented me from discussing my observations about your mental state during our meetings. But Mrs. Patterson, I think you should know. He also asked about the time frame for transferring the Florida property. Seemed very interested in whether there were any deadlines that might pressure you into quick decisions. David, if someone wanted to challenge my competency, how would they do it? They'd need evidence of impaired judgment, medical documentation preferably, and testimony from family members about concerning behavior. Then they'd petition the court for guardianship proceedings. How long would that take? Emergency guardianship can be granted in 48 hours if there's evidence of immediate risk to the person or their assets. After I hung up, I sat in my kitchen doing math. It was Wednesday afternoon. If Michael and Jennifer filed emergency guardianship papers, claiming I was about to move across the country with millions in assets while showing signs of cognitive decline, they could have legal control over my life by Friday. My phone buzzed with a text from Jennifer. Mom, we've scheduled the appointment with Dr. Morrison for tomorrow at 2 p.m. Please don't miss it. We're all just trying to help. I looked around my kitchen, at the house where I'd been happy for 40 years, at the life my children wanted to control and manage. Then I walked upstairs and started packing, and I called David Harrison at 6 a.m. Thursday morning. David, I need to get to Florida immediately. Can you meet me at the airport with papers to transfer the house deed? Mrs. Patterson, what's wrong? My family is filing for emergency guardianship. I have maybe 24 hours before I lose control of my own life. Dear God. Okay, I can have the papers ready by noon. But are you sure about this? Once you're a Florida resident, it complicates any guardianship proceedings they might file in your home state. That's exactly why I need to go. What about your house here? I'll deal with it later. Right now, I need to establish residency somewhere they can't touch me. I threw essentials into 2 suitcases, grabbed my important documents, and loaded my car. As I was putting the last bag in the trunk, Mrs. Henderson appeared at my side. Carol, honey, where are you going so early? I almost broke down right there. This dear woman who had shown me more kindness than my own children. I have to leave. Eleanor, my family is trying to take control of my finances. They think I'm not competent to manage my own life. Her face hardened. Those ungrateful children, after everything you've done for them. If they come looking for me, you don't know where I went, okay? You have my word. But Carol? She squeezed my hand. You call me when you get settled. Harold and I will worry. I will. And Eleanor, thank you for everything. At the airport, David was waiting with a thick folder of documents. Everything's ready, he said. House deed, utility transfers, even voter registration. Sign these and you're officially a Florida resident. As I signed paper after paper, my phone kept buzzing. Text after text from Michael and Jennifer. Mom, where are you? You missed your appointment with Dr. Morrison. Your car isn't in the driveway. Please call us. Mom, we're getting worried. We're going to call the police if we don't hear from you. Then my phone rang. Michael's number. Mom, where the hell are you? I'm fine, Michael. Don't give me that. You missed your appointment, your car is gone, Mrs. Henderson claims she doesn't know where you are. I'm in Florida. Silence. Then, Florida. Mom, you can't just run away like this. I'm not running away. I'm moving to my new house. This is exactly the kind of erratic behavior we were worried about. You can't make major life decisions on impulse. It's not an impulse. I've been planning this. We're filing the guardianship petition this afternoon. Jennifer's voice came through. She was on speaker. Mom, you're clearly not thinking rationally. File whatever you want. I'm a Florida resident now. Good luck with your jurisdiction. You can't hide from family, Mom, Michael said angrily. We'll fight this. You do that. But you'll be fighting it without access to my money. And you'll be fighting it while I'm living in my beach house, making my own decisions. Mom, please, Jennifer's voice cracked. We love you. We're just trying to help. If you loved me, you would have helped when I asked for $2,000. If you loved me, you would have let me stay in your guest room when I was hurt. But you didn't love me then. You just love my money now. I hung up and turned off my phone. 6 hours later, I was sitting on the back porch of Maggie's house, my house, watching the Gulf of Mexico turn gold in the sunset. My phone, still turned off, sat on the table beside a glass of wine and the lottery ticket that had started this whole adventure. I'd tested my family and learned exactly who they were. I'd discovered that strangers could show more kindness than blood relatives. I'd found out that I was stronger and braver than I'd ever imagined. But most importantly, I'd learned that sometimes the most valuable thing money can buy isn't a house or a car or even security. Sometimes it's freedom. The freedom to walk away from people who see you as a problem, to be managed, instead of a person to be respected. My new neighbor knocked on the fence gate. Mrs. Patterson, I'm Dale from next door. Welcome to the neighborhood. My wife made you a casserole for your first night. I smiled and waved him over. Please call me Carol. And thank you. That's very kind. As we chatted about the neighborhood, the best grocery stores, and the walking paths along the beach, I felt something I hadn't experienced in months. Peace. Not the exhausted peace that comes after a fight, but the deep, settled peace of being exactly where you belong. Now, I'm curious about you who listened to my story. What would you do if you were in my place? Have you ever been through something similar? Comment below. And meanwhile, I'm leaving on the final screen 2 other stories that are channel favorites, and they will definitely surprise you. Thank you for watching until here. Thanks for listening. Don't forget to subscribe and feel free to share your story in the comments. Your voice matters.